song and dance going on.
It's Darren Rose Radio, hanging out today. Again, DarrenRoseRadio.com is the website, all the social media stuff there. Going to get right into it with today's guest. He has a band called Abandoned Jalopy. He runs Studio Wishbone in the Valley, and founding member of Blind Melon, Brad Smith.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, man. Small technical issue. I wasn't recording, so we're starting over.
Okay.
But
you referred to me by Dave Cruzen.
I was referred to you by Dave Cruzen, who
Yeah.
you worked with. When did you first meet Dave Cruzen?
I met him in Seattle, and he was playing on the Candlebox record out at London Bridge, at the studio, London Bridge Studios. Yeah. And we were forming a band called Unified Theory with Chris Shin. Christopher and I were. Christopher, who was in Blind Melon with me. We started another band with a singer named Chris Shin, who's now playing with Live. He's out there touring with Live. They just got through touring Germany and all these places. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
This is right around 2000 is when I met Dave. And we tried out a bunch of different drummers, and Dave is just one of the super solid characters and people, and really great drumming, and like really musical drummer, and he was awesome.
Smart, great guy.
And he had transportation, and he showed up on time.
Yeah.
But we had the PA, so it all worked out. You know?
He's a fellow Valley guy.
Yeah, he's a Valley guy.
He's in the Valley.
Yeah.
All you guys taking over the Valley now.
Yeah. The Great 1-8.
I want to go back to the beginning. You're a guy from Mississippi.
Yes.
With a construction background. We were talking upstairs about construction. Was that what you did growing up, like summer jobs, things like that?
No, I was going to Mississippi State University, and I was actually working at a slaughterhouse when I realized that I wanted to escape to California and drive out here. You know, that was many moons ago. You know, I saved up like $800. I had an old Honda wagon, like a 1980 Honda Civic wagon, and just drove out here. Didn't know a soul. It took me a long time to get on my feet too.
Was that right out of high school, or
no? I was going to Mississippi State.
Right out of college, right out of Mississippi
Yeah,
State?
but I didn't finish. I dropped out. My mom was none too pleased. But
what were you studying?
I don't even know. I was studying how to get out of school.
Studying how to get out, yeah. So when you pointed the car west for L.A., was the dream to be a massive musician?
No, I just think I wanted something different. You know, I was just I was of the mind that if I didn't follow my heart at that age, I was never going to get an opportunity to do so. You know, you see people grow up around you all the time. I see my parents, my grandparents. You know, I think I had a really good instinct to know that I had to really act on my impulses at that age, you know. So, and I didn't want what Mississippi had to offer at the time, and I didn't want I didn't see any structure where I would fit into it well. So I was like, I'm going to California. It's a clean slate. I'm a musician, and that was kind of at the time. I think it was more of like an excuse, like, well, I'm a musician. I'm going to move to California, make it in the music industry. And I think in my heart of hearts, I knew it was a long shot.
Sure, yeah.
You know, but I knew that was enough. That was enough of a reason to give myself permission to leave. And so once I did that and jumped in with both feet, I never looked back. I just stayed out here and made it work. And that's where my construction knowledge came into play.
Oh, not till you were out here.
Oh, yeah. I was busting driveways with a jackhammer and pouring driveways, concrete and things like that for a few years. I built houses, and I've done all kind of stuff.
Do you have any particular trade, anything that in the construction field that you master?
Yeah, I'm a framer. I can frame any house. I did a lot of custom housing in Beverly Hills and Culver City and out in the Valley, and you could drop me off with like a stack of lumber and some blueprints on a slab, and I could build you a house. You know,
that's great.
Yeah,
it's a great skill to have. I mean, it's something
it is,
and that probably goes into your acousticology,
definitely
that you've dealt with in fine-tuning studios and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when Christopher and I built Studio Wishbone, I actually drew out the interior blueprints on like butcher paper, like white butcher paper, and to scale, and there's all these formulas and stuff that you can plug in all the dimensions of your room, so you don't have like obvious standing waves and harmonics and things like that.
Yeah, and we were just talking before we hit record about some of the vast variety of artists that you've had come through Wishbone.
Yeah,
Kimbra recently, Big Data.
Yeah, that Wilkins guy is a really good musician. The Big Data guy. What's his name? Isn't that Kevin Wilkins?
It's two guys, right? Is that?
Well, when Wilkis, I think is his name. When he was there with Kimbra, she was laying down some tracks and stuff. It was just one guy.
Okay.
And he does a lot of stuff in like not in Logic, but he uses Ableton Live, and he records on Logic. And then when Kimbra came to the studio, we used Pro Tools, so he just bounced a stereo file there, and she started singing her whole thing that she does with the Helicon TC thing. It's amazing.
She's got a great,
She killed. Well, it's not only that, she's got a great voice. A lot of people have great voice, but she's a very together girl. She knows what she wants. She comes in and says, "Open up 24 tracks." Don't flip playlists. Like, she has a very specific way of working, so she has her act together.
Right, yeah.
And she's very efficient, and she can serve these producers and singing over tracks and stuff exactly what they want with options. She's good. She's a nimble girl. She's awesome.
Is she cutting an album? Is she doing a new record?
Yeah, she's got her own thing going on, but she's getting pulled in to do a lot of guest spots on other people's records too. But as you know, she's very successful at doing that as well.
Yeah, that Gautier song she was on a few years back just launched her. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, I want to spin things back a little bit to growing up in Mississippi. What's a question I always like to ask artists is your first music memory?
Wow, first music memory. The first music. Well, my dad had a 12-string Yamaha guitar, 72-ish, something like that. Had a big wide neck on it because it was a 12-string. But he never put 12 strings on it. It was a 6-string. He just strung it up as a 6-string, So he had that Roy Clark Big Note songbook because I think he was trying to teach himself how to play guitar, possibly. The kind where you put the stickers on the fretboards and you look at the pictures, and Roy Clark from Hee Haw tells you how to play an A minor and a C or whatever. And the stickers were lost or whatever. But in the songbook was things like Kumbaya, Michael Row the Boat Ashore, and all these crazy things. So I just kind of figured it out. I put my fingers where it said to on the dots and started kind of singing along and making up my own melodies and stuff. And I think that was my first experience where I was like, oh, I can kind of do this.
And how old were you?
And I don't know. I was maybe like 9.
And did it come pretty easily for you?
No, it was a struggle because I didn't have anybody to teach me. My dad would show me a few things when he could play a few chords and play a couple of songs and stuff, and that was kind of an inspiration. Like, oh, I can do that too. If he can do it, I can do it. But I think for me, what made that kind of almost important that I didn't have a teacher is that there's something to be said for discovering something yourself. When things were forced on you, you don't really take to them as easily because, this is kind of like school was almost like that for me. It's like I want to learn stuff my own way, and maybe it was just the establishment or just the normal way of teaching kids or whatever that I didn't really respond to that well. But when you discover something for yourself, you feel like you own it in a way. No one gave that to you. You discovered it. I found this territory in my brain, and I'm not saying I'm a virtuoso at all.
Sure.
But I'm just saying that it became that passion of discovering stuff on your own, which happened to be music, became very ingrained in my personality, and made me want to move forward and capitalize on it,
And were you strictly just a guitar player, or did you? Because I know you played bass with Blind Melon.
Yeah, no, I had a pretty wide range back in the day. I was in 6th grade. I played baritone horn in concert band.
Oh, cool!
Yeah, like a little baby tuba,
Yeah.
And then up until like 10th grade, I was the drum captain during marching season. So I was like in a drum line and played snare drum and things like that. And so and then I sang a little bit, and then I started playing bass in the band with Rogers, who and I, we started Blind Melon together. Mm-hmm. And I switched from guitar to bass because the bass player bailed, or we fired him or some stupid thing in junior high or high school, and I ended up playing bass. And that was like the perfect world for me because you get some harmony and rhythm, and that's where kind of my drum background and my harmony background kind of came from because I was playing baritone horn in concert season. So it wasn't just like root notes for me, what I mean, as a bass player. So it was a good fit for me.
What about music influences? Did you have a older brother or sister? What kind of music was on the family stereo?
Well, it's mainly my mom's. My mom was a single mom, raising 2 kids, 2 boys, and she had an 8-track player.
Okay.
And it was things like, let me think about Saturday Night, the Bee Gees.
Sure.
The
kind of disco era.
The Sgt. Pepper, but
Beatles.
the Bee Gees version.
There's a Bee Gees version of Sgt. Pepper?
Yeah, yeah. I
didn't know that.
Definitely.
They covered the album?
Yeah. Then there's Saturday Night Fever. There was the Doobie Brothers. I think I said that. She had Hendrix 8-track tape. She had a couple of country things that I didn't really like. Leonard Skinner, Allman Brothers. Al Stewart, Chicago, the Moody Blues, Iron Butterfly.
Okay.
You know,
so
and
you
that was her
definitely had the
album.
rock influence,
The rock
and some of that
trippy influence.
country too, probably.
Yeah, because I was born in '68, and so my mom's album collection was from her high school years, and so it was right in the thick of Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and all that great stuff. But really,
era.
what really made me like get turned on to rock, like in a more modern way at the time, anyway, was that first Van Halen record. That Running with the Devil record is incredible. My uncle burned that for me from his vinyl to cassette, and I had it on. I had it on my dual cassette. It was so good, man. I love that record.
Well, now, let's talk about how you recorded when with Blind Melon. You came from Mississippi out to L.A. doing some construction stuff. How long were you out here before you got everybody together and you guys started playing as Blind Melon?
That's a little bit blurry. I mean, I got out here and I was 19 years old, and I was signed and touring right on my 23rd birthday. So I think I got signed when I was 22. So maybe like 3 years, maybe a year of that was doing construction and just literally getting on my feet. I was living in a hotel for like a good 3 or 4 months before someone would rent an apartment to me, because I didn't have any local credit or a bank account or anything like that. It was tough, It was the real deals. And I was going down to Venice Beach, and I was playing for change on the street just for like the weekend entertainment thing for me, playing open mic nights and things like that. And No Rain was one of those songs. I was playing No Rain on Venice Beach for change. I made just enough for like chicken teriyaki and like to pay for my parking when I was there, and then that was like the weekend for me.
It's incredible to think that one of the most defining songs of an era was one time played on the beach in Venice, just strumming your guitar.
Yeah, wearing a tie-dye T-shirt.
Yeah, of course. No Rain is the song. When did you write that?
I think I was 21.
You wrote it here in LA then?
21. Yeah, I was living actually in Culver City. I was living in Culver City down there on Culver Boulevard and driving down Venice Boulevard to the beach, And
what were those sessions like with that? Did you guys record that album together? Because we were talking about kind of tracking things out and all that.
Yeah.
Or was it more or less a live?
Oh, no, that first record? No, the first record is that we rehearsed a bunch in downtown, a place called Downtown Rehearsal. It's kind of a famous rehearsal spot here in L.A. And we were driving down there 3 times a week, and we ended up moving from Los Angeles because we kind of needed to get out of town. We ended up moving to North Carolina for a little while, and we finished the songwriting for that first record. And then we moved during the middle of that, we moved to Seattle because Rick Parasher was going to produce we decided on Rick Parasher to record our first record.
Who has London Bridge Studios?
He has London Bridge Studios.
Which, for those that don't know, I mean, London Bridge has recorded everybody.
Yeah.
Even, from 2 days ago to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
All those Seattle bands came out of there.
Absolutely. And that was part of the thing. He played us the Sap record, the Alice in Chains Sap record. Is
One
like
of the
part
best
of
EPs of all time.
It's great, and he played that for us, and we were in North Carolina. He flew from Seattle to North Carolina. It's a 3,000-mile flight, But he flew out there and he played us this thing on his little DAT man, and it was like, whoa, that's killer. It sounds amazing. We were fans, And but once we got there, we kind of had our act together, and there was no click track, straight to tape, live takes except for the vocals. I mean, Shannon would sing the pilot vocal and just to keep us in line to get through the thing, but we did like maybe 3 or 4 takes per song and just pick the best take.
Okay.
And then Shannon would record some overdubs, and maybe a guitar solo would get overdubbed or something like that. But for the most part, it was live basics, live beds with no click track. And you can tell now.
Yeah.
As a producer, I go back and listen to that, and I'm like, man, we didn't really stay. I'm sure we didn't play to a click track.
But that's the beauty of that era, I think, is how records were made.
Yeah.
And you can hear it now with how, like, a pop artist makes a record versus like a White Stripes or a Jack White record, or and there's still studios that that are more purist. And it's the fact is that artists have all the tools at their disposal, so everything has its own sound and its own unique vibe. Yeah. But obviously, back in the 90s, there weren't as many, or early 90s, there weren't as many options when you wanted to make a record.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's hard to find. They're out there, but it's hard to find like real bands too. There's a lot of singer-songwriter, and you formulate a band through overdubs and Pro Tools in someone's bedroom. But we like grinded it out in a rehearsal hall for a long time.
Yeah.
And then we go into the studio when we had our act together, and we could go, bam, there's the song, and it holds up. After years, it holds up. When things get too careful and too overdubby, and you're trying to search for your sound as you're looking at a computer screen and coming back to it a month later, something kind of gets lost there. You know, it's that communication of a band being in the same room and fighting and loving and crying together that kind of makes something special in a way. You know, like living, like the lifestyle. You know,
yeah,
and. So, I mean, everybody has the common denominator of Pro Tools or Logic or whatever computer format you're working in, and you don't really have to rehearse that much anymore.
Right.
You know,
which is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, you know.
But, you know, you got to
But
pay
times
for
are changing.
Yeah, you got to pay for recording or rehearsal space. Everything costs money. Talking about the kind of the anatomy of No Rain, and I don't know how often you maybe reflect on the fact that, you know, it is one of those generation-defining songs. You know, it's probably one of the most recognizable riffs and singable songs from that era.
Yeah.
It was different in the sense, too, that, you know, you had Smells Like Teen Spirit, you had Pearl Jam Alive, you had Soundgarden, Rusty Cage, and I'm thinking of songs from that era that were more harder driven, but then No Rain came out, and it was a song that, you know, it was palatable to a wider generation, and it was singable. That's the thing too, is that, you know, even now I don't know all the words to Pearl Jam Alive. You know, I mean, I could sing along to it, but I don't know the words.
Right.
Whereas that song, it was very, I don't know, there was a kind of a paradigm going on in that song, because it was talking about, you know, I like to watch the puddles gather rain, and, you know, it's a great escape, and it's a happy song with kind of a downtrodden angst message.
Yeah.
Am I?
No, you're dead on. Not everybody gets that, but yeah, it was about it's about codependency, a little bit of depression in there. Like, you know, what am I doing with my life, and keeping things simple and alone sometimes it makes me happier than trying to like put on a happy face, you know. So that's what the song is about, you know.
Yeah, and you look at and it's one of those things where it's you know, again, if you hear the song without the music, you wouldn't think, without the lyrics, you wouldn't think that that's where it was going.
Right.
And I think it was that polarizing feeling that maybe was part of that popularity. And it was
Shannon. Shannon killed it, and the video wasn't too bad either. Sam Baer did that video for No Rain with the B Girl, and brought our little you know, the little B girl that's on the front of that first record.
Yes.
He brought her to life through a casting agent, found a girl that kind of looked like the girl on the album cover, and he had this great concept for a video. And so, and MTV, thank God, they put it into some brainwash rotation, and it's become one of those songs, you know, and we can go out and play it like in a bunch of different countries now, and people just love that song. And I was like, it still amazes me to this day. It's been over 20 years. I'm like stoked by it.
And you've probably gone onto YouTube. There's hundreds of covers and remixes and everything.
Well, I just did a version.
Did you do another one?
I redid a version. I have this other project called The Garden District.
Okay.
And it's me and this girl named Andrea Waz, and she's awesome. She was in a band called Digital Daggers for a long time. She's signed to Sony ATV Publishing, and she comes over and we do like this Pink Floyd, Mazzy Star, Massive Attack trip for and it's really haunting, like suspense thriller music. You know, it's like it's not rock. It's not really rock. It's like it's the other side of me that's kind of away from my Americana rock roots.
Okay.
And I get a little more like heady and Pink Floyd and psychedelic on it, and it's awesome.
So where can we find that? Where can we hear that?
We're actually we're trying to finish up a record before the end of December, which is going to be tough for the holidays, but that's the goal. We're going to shoot for it. And I did a version of No Rain in a different key, different instrumentation. She's singing it, and it's killer. It's not even in a major key; it's in a minor key. It's pretty wicked.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of people that are interested in placing it in some movies and things like that. So it's exciting. But that song, I just did a reimagination of my own song, which is actually kind of fun because I rewrote the song that I wrote the first time and got away from my first instincts, you know. And with her singing, it really made a difference, you know. And it was just a joy. It's awesome.
That's great. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where, for a kid growing up in Seattle, and being a part of, I was in high school when that whole explosion happened. Graduated in 94. I remember going camping with buddies, and we were out in this field, and we're like recreating that No Rain video of you guys sitting out there. And yeah, we were at, the Gorge in Eastern Washington.
I played there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You also played Woodstock.
The Gorge at George.
Gorge at George, yeah. And we were out in the fields and whatever.
No, actually, one of my favorite shows, speaking of the Gorge, is I played a triple bill. And we were by far the smallest band. It was Neil Young, Pearl Jam, and Blind Melon at the Gorge.
Oh, I totally remember that. Yeah. I remember
because
I remember that
fun.
Pearl Jam Neil Young thing going on.
There's very few. I've played over 1,000 shows, and I remember a few of them. Yeah. That's one I remember. I remember that one. I remember things like Woodstock and opening up for the Stones and Page and Plant and all that kind of stuff. I remember being on stage and realizing that I was in Shannon's band. I was not in Blind Melon. And in a good way. I kind of fought that, just being a principal songwriter on the first record and having a lot of my lyrics, get through. Not as much of that happened on the second record, right? And even though I turned in lyrics and stuff for the second record, Shannon would he read them, maybe didn't. He just went, threw them out and just did his own thing over the music that I wrote, which was fine because it turned out to be, it was actually better. I mean, it was hard to fault him, and I don't blame him, in a certain way.
So like less of a collaborative effort.
It was less, it was a direct collaborative, very much a collaborative effort between the band and Shannon, right? And
but he was driving the ship, more or less.
He was kind of, it's kind of like I said, when I go back to that Woodstock, my mindset during that Woodstock show is that, Shannon's wearing this white dress and he is on fire. I'm hanging on by fingernails, remembering bass parts, and I can't really hear Glenn, and Rogers is like, 300 yards away playing guitar, and and it was just I was just struggling to get through the show, and Shannon is like dominating the show. He is the show, right? And I remember my shoulders kind of like relax, and I'm just like, okay, I'm in Shannon's band. I'm gonna follow that guy too. You know what I mean? It was a very good moment for me in a really strange way, and
no resentment at all.
No.
Okay.
No, I think I'd already been through that at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I realized that Shannon was like super rare. I knew it going in way before Woodstock. I knew it when I met the guy.
That he was just a star, that he had that charisma. And
he had that thing, there's shows built around people like Shannon, The X Factor and The Voice and American Idol and all that kind of stuff. It's the it thing, and a lot of those people didn't even have what Shannon had. They win the show. You know what I mean? Shannon was just a dude from Indiana that had some demons that he hid under a very thick layer of charm. And he had a really amazing way of writing lyrics and getting into your soul. He was great. He's phenomenal. So
when did you, as a band, or you personally, Brad, realize that Shannon had some of those drug demons that he was working out, or was the band, were you guys just kind of young and partying and everybody was...
Yeah, we were young and partying. The thing about drugs is never a problem until it's a problem.
Until you lose your lead singer. It's not
I mean, he'd been to a couple of rehabs before that. It's well documented. He'd been to a couple of rehabs before that. But, yeah, that was tough.
But you guys, because I remember talking to Dave about this, and it's always interesting when you have those bands where the dynamic changes, because you might have one that can't deal with celebrity, or they can't deal with the partying, or they can't deal with the road, or they can't deal with getting together as a crew. Did you have those types of issues, or because you said that going into Woodstock there were already some riffs within the band?
It's all cliche stuff that you can imagine. Was it drugs and people getting spread out and going too many different directions? Yes. Was it a rift with the new president at Capitol Records not liking our band and liking some other band more and we're not priority? Yes. It's like, we were just so scattered and spread out, and we had just made this really eccentric, eclectic record. The Soup record is very deep record. The
second one, yeah.
It holds up too. It's a crazy record, it was all the cliche things you can imagine is what was going on with the band.
Sure. Where were you? I want to get to Shannon's when Shannon passed away, but where were you when you found out Kurt passed away? Because that was about a year prior in '94.
Yeah, we were about to go. We were playing David Letterman that day, and I found out. I think on the radio, on the cab ride over to David Letterman's studios, I found out, and the guys were already there. Somehow they beat me there. I can't remember how that worked out, but I walked into the green room and I told everybody, and that's where I was, And then Shannon put that big question mark on his forehead, and he actually played on David Letterman with like this magic marker question mark on his head.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and he was great. He was great in that too,
Did you know Kurt?
I never. What's funny? I never saw Nirvana play.
Okay.
I never met Kurt. Never. I don't know any of those guys.
Because when you guys were living in Seattle during that period of time, did you get part of the scene, going out and playing shows or going out and seeing shows? Were you kind of embedded in that Seattle lifestyle a little bit?
No. The Seattle lights didn't really like us that much.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah,
the Seattle chill, they call it.
Yeah, the Seattle chill. I got Seattle chill for years. I ended up moving there. I lived there twice, actually.
I've never knew that, and then I about a year before I moved out of Seattle, I was out at a bar with a buddy of mine, and we were talking to these girls, like, oh, well, where are you from? And they said New Jersey, and they go, God, I've never met somebody. And I wasn't being an asshole. It's like, I've never met somebody that's not from Seattle. And they go, that's funny. I've never met somebody from Seattle. And they lived there for like a year.
Yeah.
It's very, it has its own thing. Hopefully it's not like that. We're more friendly to visitors now.
Well, I like Seattle just because, great music did come out of there at the time. The time that we moved there, but we were not grunge. We weren't anything close to like Soundgarden or Pearl Jam or Alice in Chains.
You were still modern rock.
Mudhoney or any. We were, we were modern rock, but I think that they just put us in the grunge category because they didn't know what else to do with us. I thought at the time we were much closer to things like the Allman Brothers or something like that. For me personally,
yeah, sure.
Just because of our, we had three Southern dudes in the band, and we kind of wrote around a blues type of thing. It wasn't blues, but it was, blues intervals, I guess you would say,
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to the other tragedy, where were you, or how did you learn that Shannon had passed away?
It's still tough to talk about to this day, but I'll just, I was in the hotel room, and he was down on the tour bus where they had found him, but I was in the hotel room in New Orleans. And I got the call from the manager, and super shocked and kind of bewildered, and realized that only then, that drugs can actually kill you. You know what I mean? Because all of us had been through some types of partying and things like that, and there was just a lot of other times that I thought something bad would happen, like a car crash or something like that,
Yeah.
It's it was a real shocker,
Do you think it was? I mean, again, and this may be difficult to talk about with because there's discussions with Kurt where he was suicidal anyway, but he was also they say that maybe before he even took his own life, he might have taken a lethal dose of heroin,
right?
But Shannon wasn't.
No, Shannon was not like that at all.
Yeah, Shannon was not wanting to.
Shannon wanted to have a good time all the time. Not to quote Spinal Tap, but he wanted to have a good time all the time, and that's what he was after. I think maybe he developed some demons over the years, within the short run that we had. Blind Melon wasn't around that many years, and maybe he was dealing with some stuff that I didn't know about. But I never saw it. He never confided in me that he had any kind of like deep family troubling issues, not anything that he couldn't handle, not any more than anybody else. I think Shannon just liked to party and have a good time and make friends and hang out, and maybe there was a physical dependency that developed there, and that become more of a chronic psychological dependency because of that. And it's just like, it's a typical cliche drug story. Rock and roll drug story. But Shannon was not suicidal.
Sure.
And I think at the end of the day, Blind Melon would have probably broken up and gotten back together 3 or 4 times by now, and Shannon would have had some killer solo records and would have been bigger than any Blind Melon thing. I think he had that kind of force and talent in him, and his best work was yet to be discovered in a way, you know.
Cocaine was his drug of choice. Or was there a variety?
I don't think a choice was ever in his mind. It's like whatever was there. Yeah. You know. I don't know if it was his choice. I don't know.
Well, people have their favorites. You know, I mean, some.
Yeah.
You know.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
I saw that his son's
daughter,
Nico. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, cool.
Nico is now making music.
Yeah,
or been making music for quite a while.
Well, she's been dabbling in some songwriting and stuff. I've been trying to ask her to get her to send me some of her stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. And I got her to do a song with me called "The Wolf," and I wrote this song called "The Wolf," and I went to Indiana and I rented a studio and pulled her in to do some background vocals and things like that. And that's the first release off my new upcoming record that's actually coming out, hopefully in the spring of next year, hopefully, if I can get our planets to line up.
Got a lot of balls in the air, man.
I do. I get bored quickly, so I get sick of myself pretty quickly, too.
You and me both.
Yeah, so I got her to sing on that, and that's up on iTunes now. That's the only release from my new record that's out there right now with Nico singing with me. And that was a really, really amazing, like, full circle situation for me to have Shannon's daughter sitting there singing with me. And she's old enough now where I feel like I can talk to her about Shannon and tell her about, you know, how great he was and what a special person he was without fear of, like, messing her up psychologically or something, you know. She's awesome. Yeah. Nico's great. Yeah, she's in school. She's going to college.
So following the passing of Shannon, and I know that you guys went on to, you guys kind of stopped Blind Melon for a while, and then you went back to it late 90s. What were those conversations? Was it a mutual band and label decision as to what to do after losing your singer?
Yeah, well, the management and our business management definitely wanted us to do another record because we can cash in on the third option deal, which is like a $750,000 advance. But it never felt right, you know. So we were listening to you really need to take advantage of this and think about your future and things like that. But we're not a band anymore, you know. Elvis has left the building,
right?
You know. So I think we went through the motions of trying to find another singer. At the time, this is like in 95 or 6-ish and somewhere in there, you know.
Did some rehearsal or did some
we did
auditions
and things like that. Did some recordings. There were some recordings of me actually singing, trying to like pull the band together around my voice, and that didn't quite work out. It wasn't the same. Mm-hmm. And then we tried to get another. We looked into a couple of dudes. I think one guy's name was Davey Hilder. This guy named Ryan Keene. Ryan was, stepped in the rehearsal hall for a little while and tried to see if we can make it go, and it wasn't there. He would even say so too. It wasn't quite there, and so we just let that go.
Yeah,
you know. And then I took a couple of years. I took a year off and just snowboard and fly fished and just soaked in Seattle and just forgot about everything for a little while. I was really crushed by Shannon's passing, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And then we formed Unified Theory, and then I built a studio out in North Hollywood with Christopher, produced a bunch of records, Anna Nalick, and the guy that went on to become AWOL Nation.
Aaron Bruno. Well, speaking of music, like these days, it's just such a vast, different business than it was when you guys first launched. Mm-hmm. Even like tracking things like, No Rain. Did that have a lot of placements? Did that get a lot of licensing back in the day?
Not as much as you might think, but it wasn't cool back then.
It was. I was just going to say, back then you couldn't get away with it
because we were idiots.
You would have. Well, I think probably for you guys getting going, what was the main? I mean, it was probably album sales, touring.
Album sales, yeah. We sold 4 million records, which is unheard of these days.
How many singles has No Rain sold?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably
I have to go look.
Many millions at this point.
It's kind of another topic, but I know I can look up the analytics on Pandora, and it played 14 million times in 3 months through Pandora. Yeah, we got paid $7 for that.
When it comes to royalties, is that basically just from airplay, like radio play? Is that?
Yeah, radio play, some TV placements and things like that. Video, board games. things that I've approved No Rain for, like music trivia or whatever, the DVD version.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it's mainly radio play still. It still plays on the radio a lot. It's
Yeah, and
amazing.
then you still, yeah, that'll always be in rotation.
Yeah.
Do you see spikes where, let's say it's happens to be on a Sunday football game?
Mm-hmm.
Will you see spikes on maybe iTunes? People are like, oh shit, I haven't heard that song in years. And then where it random gets placements and you'll see these, like I remember when Don't Stop Believin' was on the end of Sopranos.
Oh yeah.
And it, by the
Huge.
following week it had sold 15 additional million copies or something.
I don't know. I can't really say I see spikes. That song has kind of taken its own course miraculously. But just being left alone, and I probably have to dig around and see if there's any kind of method to the madness, because I don't know.
Yeah,
I still think I'm lucky that song's a hit to begin with. So
you're also in that group of people where you have one of those songs I think that has affected a lot of people's lives for the better. Was one of those songs where, like, hey, I listened to this song when I had a shitty day or when I was going through a breakup or a divorce or I lost my kid. And I mean, do you have a lot of those types of experiences? I just think that's such an important.
I hear that about a lot of the Blind Melon music, not just No Rain.
Of course,
but I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, you got me through some really tough spots," and we miss Shannon, and I learned a lot from Shannon. And after what happened to Shannon, I made me rethink my situation. And I hear that from people a lot when because Blind Melon still goes out and plays shows here and there, and it's always nice to hear that kind of stuff where you're like, oh, like I made a difference. Because sometimes as an artist, you never know if you make a difference or not, And so when you hear somebody witness to you like that, you're like, okay, it makes me feel good too,
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
And I mean, you probably have multiple generations saying that too.
Well, I'm getting older, right? So the funny thing is now the catchphrase that makes me wince a little bit. It's like, oh man, I love you guys. I'm like, you're too young to be a Blind Melon fan. It's like, my parents were so into you, and I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is the pass down from your parents, like.
But that's great. I mean, that's how you know that you have kind of a lifetime. You've created music that stands up. It's lifetime music, I think, that stays. Going back to what we were saying a little bit about kind of how the music business is now, what's your feeling on distribution? Like how that has changed? Because for a guy that continues to make music under your own name, as well as having artists come in and use your Wishbone Studios, what do you say to artists, or what's kind of your 3,000-foot view on music distribution now?
I could spout off a bunch of stuff like I know what I'm talking about.
Well,
but I don't think anybody does, to tell you the truth. I mean, part of me goes, you need to build a really good social media campaign and get your spins up, and then go to a record company and go, hey, we got 54,000 views on this song. You don't even know who we are, And then people they go, oh, that's cool. The part of me goes, depending on the artist, goes, you know what? Your biggest asset is that nobody knows who you are right now. Now go to a record company and go, I'm going to let you in on the ground floor on this, and we're going to do it right together. Instead of me fumbling out there and trying to figure it out, your job. You need to sign me on the merit of my craft and my songs and my presence, and let's do it right from the get-go. So I don't even know. I don't even know.
And I think what you're talking about is the difference between a major label is going to like the band that has the 50,000 Instagram followers, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I think some of the smaller indie or more progressive modern labels are going to want what you just mentioned, a band that nobody's heard of. They have a different sound. It's unique, something that could really help put this label on the map.
Yeah, and present the band in the right way.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the majors have floundered, because they've signed these bands that have a hooky or maybe one hooky song, and they have a bunch of followers, everything on all the social media sites, but you can buy all that stuff. Yeah, you can go tonight and get 100,000 followers on Twitter. It doesn't mean shit.
It doesn't mean anything.
So,
it doesn't mean anything.
I mean, it's interesting to talk to someone like yourself who's been in the business for a long time, because I've noticed you've never started a record label.
No.
Is that something you've ever considered?
If I saw a business model that would make sense and it could account for my time spent, I probably would. But I don't know. I don't know what the business model is, and I've been in some major label offices recently, and they can't tell me what the business model is actually going to work. Because I asked them, like, well, how are you guys making money? how are you guys doing this? And the answer varies from, well, we get part of their publishing, or we get part of their touring, or we get part of their merchandise. We're doing 360 deals, and we're only giving out $30,000 for as a recording advance. And I'm like, God, that sounds like an indie deal in the 90s,
No.
That was like a big indie deal back in the 90s. That's a major label deal now. And, they do a great job with things in pop and things like that, but I don't know where it's going. I'm not sure where it's going. I'm trying to figure out. I'm waiting on someone to come out with a business model or some kind of scheme where artists are going to get paid and get the quality back up. Because right now it's a bunch of white noise out there. Because everybody with a laptop computer can make a record in their bedroom, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're talented.
Exactly.
So I'm just kind of waiting, and I'm cherry picking the things that I like, which I'm trusting my own instincts on this when it comes to recording and me producing stuff down at the studio. Mm-hmm. I'm getting behind the stuff that I like, and that's really all I can do. I wasn't a businessman in the beginning, and I don't think I'm going to be in the end in terms of like being a taste maker. I know what I like, and that's all I can do.
And what about? Do you have licensing companies that you work with? Do you have different? I don't know if you're with a big like Warner Chappell, or if you have worked with any boutique or smaller placement companies,
like for film and television, things like that. Yeah, there's my buddy Chris Molaire is like a sound supervisor, and the girls up at Sony ATV, Maggie and Molly and Wendy and some people. I know a lot of people up there that help me get some of the Garden District stuff placed and a Band of Jalopy stuff placed. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing a lot of music for trailer, trying to break into the trailer world. And so LA Soundscapes is we're trying to work out a deal between me and them to get some of my music into trailers and sound design and things like that. But I'm just trying to stay diverse, I'm not just a one-trick pony. I never have been, and I'm just going to keep spreading myself as thin as possible.
Well, what is next? So you talked about so to find Brad Smith now, Abandoned Jalopy,
Abandoned Jalopy, and Brad Smith on Facebook, Abandoned Jalopy on Facebook as well, and the Garden District, which is kind of my newest thing that I'm doing with that girl Andrea Waz, who's awesome. And it's really spooky, groovy music, and the Band of Jalopy stuff is really just my heart. It's heart in an album format. And there's songs about love, loss, and family, and that's what that's about. It sounds like Brad from Mississippi's band. The other stuff is a little more crafted and sound designed out. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook.
And tour? Are you going to head out on the road?
Well, I've been touring out of Nashville. I have 3 bands. Dave Cruisen's in the LA version of Abandoned Jalopy. Okay. And then when I tour in the Midwest, I fly into Nashville, and Rob Searles and John Searles, they're in a band called Scalehound.
Okay.
And they we have this drummer named Chris Belt, who's from Benton, Kentucky, and they're my AJ band. A Band of Jalopy band out of Nashville. And it's a completely different flavor. Same songs, though, right?
That's cool.
And then I have another band in Argentina. I made this film in Argentina. It's being edited right now. It's about the language of music. It's called One for the Road. And I flew down to Argentina with all my songs and some new songs. At the time, they were new songs. And walked into a rehearsal hall with all these guys that couldn't speak English. And we just worked through the songs together, and me showing them and kind of phonetically getting through, how the song is supposed to go.
Well, Brad Smith, it's been an honor and a privilege for us to sit here and shoot the shit about the business.
Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun, man.
Thanks again.
Cheers.
All right. Take care.